Top of the morning to you all. Oh my goodness. Happy St. Patrick's Day. Today it is March 17th. I have to make an announcement that I don't have any Irish whiskey in the house. So I can't do the Irish accent forever. But anyway, happy St. Patrick's Day, everybody. I didn't have any Irish whiskey in the house, so I looked for any kind of whiskey that could approximate it, and I went for the the islands north of Scotland. So it's not the island to the west of Great Britain, Ireland. It's the islands off the northern coast. In Orkney. I got this for Christmas a little while back. I haven't been drinking all that much in the last little while. But hey, it's St. Patrick's Day, so what the heck? Let's have some fun. Welcome to the show. Thanks very much for joining us. This is going to be a good time. If you haven't noticed, our handsome producer AJ, is not in town. He's at work doing his real job. I've got my St. Patrick's jersey on tonight. Mitch Marner is on the back. Take that for what you will. I love the green. I love the St. Pat's jerseys. The ones they're wearing tonight, not as nice. But in any case, we are not here just to have some fun and drink a bunch of alcohol. We're not going to do that. But we are going to have a lot of fun. So welcome to the show. Again, AJ is not here tonight. He is off doing his real job. So it's just you and me again tonight. But in my defense, we have a guest coming on Thursday. We have a guest coming on Thursday who is actually employed by a professional hockey team to do this for them. We're having Mikael Holm on the show on Thursday afternoon, patching in all the way from Sweden. He is a scout with Frölunda, and congratulations, by the way, to Frölunda's women's hockey team for winning the SDHL championship over there. So good for them. But he's going to pop on the show. We're going to talk, how he does his job, how things work for Frölunda over there, how they do their thing, how he fits into that picture, and how he just does his thing. And also take a look at, obviously, some 2007s and some other guys eligible for the NHL draft this year in Sweden. He'll be on, as far as I know, he'll be on for the full 2 hours. So we're going to have a lot of fun with Mikael on the show, so you can definitely look forward to that on Thursday afternoon. He is a very good friend of mine, and we go way back. And he's a very insightful guy, and he's definitely picked up a lot from working with Frölunda. So yeah, going to be really, really fun, and definitely going to learn a lot. I'm sure you will as well. So in any case, what we are doing tonight, obviously, since it's just you and me, we're doing it old school. We're doing a Scouching Live old school. So again, if you have any questions, fire them in the chat, and I will get to them as soon as I possibly can. If you're not familiar with me and what I do, if you're new here, there's a few of you, I'm sure. Welcome to the show. What I do is I am essentially tracking data by hand and watching video on a whole load of prospects for the NHL draft, some re-entry guys as well. And I basically package it and sell it. And you can actually, so tonight is another opportunity for you to dig into it if you want to maybe see what a subscription gets you. But here's a preview of what you can get. So on the left, you have my live rankings, which you would have access to at the second tier and above. So if you want to keep an eye on that and how things have changed over the year, you can definitely check that out there. And my track data is on this side of the page here. Kashan Aitchison was the last one I did, so you can definitely poke around, or we can poke around on that if you have any questions about anyone, if I have enough data to really dig into on that. So yeah. In any case, welcome to the show. It's a good time. I mean, obviously, with the Toronto St. Pat's playing tonight against the Calgary Flames in green on Amazon Prime, I don't have the game going live in front of me, so unfortunately, that's not going to happen. I won't be distracted. But yes, fire all your questions into the chat, and we will get to them at some point. In terms of stuff going on, there has been a lot of players tracked recently. I've been very, very, very busy. Obviously, video room stuff is a bit secondary right now because I'm trying to get over the finish line with some players and start putting out some actual scouting reports. And you can tell me if this is a bad idea. I'm sure the people who are here this early in the show are longtime listeners and commenters and everything. We are going to switch up the format a little bit again this year. Last year was more TikTok short form friendly, and that was good. went pretty well, but I don't think it went quite as in depth as I think both AJ and I really thought would be best. So we kind of want to strike a balance between what was first, or what we first did on the channel, which is really, really long form stuff, and what we did last year. So we're going to switch it up and do it a bit more like the video room videos, where I'll go through the clips that I've pulled of the player and sort of craft something as we go, and just walk through some of the video that I've pulled and sort of explain what's going on with that player and all of that stuff, because I feel like people are more engaged in stuff like that rather than me just talking about data points and all that stuff and having their eyes glaze over. So I want to sort of walk through the evidence of why I came to the conclusions that I've come to. And so we're thinking about experimenting with that. And so, yeah, if that sounds like a really good idea, I am more than happy to hear that. And if it sounds like a bad idea, I don't care. Don't tell me. No, I'm kidding. I mean, like, I'm happy to play around with the formula, find something that really, really works, but we're going to try that, see how it goes, because some of the video rooms, including the most recent one of David Reinbacher, have done really, really well. So, again, and also thank you for that. If Habs fans, you know, you're always loyal. Habs fans will watch anything about their prospects, and it helps pay the bills, which is great. So I appreciate it. I appreciate you, Habs fans. One of my favorite experiences in a hockey arena anywhere was the 2022 draft in Montreal. It was spectacular. I have never seen a cloud indoors, but I saw a cloud indoors about 2 minutes after Juraj Slafkovsky got drafted. But anyway, I digress. We can get into the chat in a sec. I'll go through some players that I've seen since Thursday and tracked since Thursday, which is the last time we kind of did a one-on-one here. By the way, before we get into that list, AJ will also not be here on Thursday, so it's going to be me and Mikhail one-on-one on Thursday, so look forward to that. But I heard from AJ that next week he should be here both weeks. We're obviously going to talk about the Toronto Maple Leafs and whatever the heck is going on there. I mean, if they win tonight, then they're going to the championship, I'm sure, but we went to the game Monday night, and it was a time. We'll probably get to that at some point, but I do want to get through the list of players that I've looked at in the last few days. I guess Friday and today, and I think I did a game after the show on Thursday. But anyway, Mikhail Fyodorov of Stalny Elizy Magnitogorsk. I did William Bell of the NTDP. Makar Fomin of Severstal Sherepovets. He's actually playing in the minors, or on the junior team. Eddie Genborg, an SHL game with Linköping. Jackson Smith, I did another game of. Cullen Potter, I did my 6th game of. He might be coming up relatively soon for a report. I've got Carson Cameron, I got a game of today. Blake Fiddler, I did a game of his today. Kayshawn Aitchison, I did a game today. Dmitry Isayev of Avtomobilist, or Avto Yekaterinburg. Avtomobilist is the pro team, I think. Anyway, junior player in Yekaterinburg. If you paid me $1,000 to find Yekaterinburg on a map, I probably couldn't do it. I feel like I'm kind of decent at GeoGuessr, but Yekaterinburg is, I don't know. It's one of those ones where I just sort of close my eyes, click on the map, and see where that goes. Maybe we could play some GeoGuessr tonight. I have a subscription, so if you're interested in that, we could play some GeoGuessr together to kill some time. But no, we're going to answer your questions. We're going to talk hockey. We're going to have some fun. I also did a game of Alexander Zhuravsky, if we're talking Russian prospects out of Ufa. There's been a lot of talk about him lately. Don't forget, I've been on that boat for a while. Depending on who you ask, it's getting a little out of control, but I watched him today to make sure of that. Danilo Stinkov, I did another game of his. I have been going back on him over the course of the season. He's been playing in the National League playoffs, so I tracked one of those games today. And I finished the day today with a game of Benjamin Keevan of the Des Moines Buccaneers. Going buck wild today. Anyway, so yeah, that's what I've been up to. Those are the players that I've most recently had a look at. So there's definitely plenty to go around. Been busy, and we're going to continue to be busy. It's going to be fun, obviously. We are getting into crunch time. The draft is just over 3 months away. Terrifying. But, I mean, I am very quickly getting to the point where I watch more games, and I'm going, yep, this is more of what I've seen, very similar. I'm starting to sort of solidify things. And, yeah, so hopefully we'll have our guys... we will have our next list coming at the end of the month or into early next month. I got to start putting that together, but I am still finalizing some stuff. So again, if you have any questions about any of the data or anything that I've tracked or anything, or any of the players that I just mentioned, definitely let me know, and we can flip over to the other little display and have a quick little look. Okie dokie. Oh boy. So we're again, every week we march slowly and slowly more towards being just a gaming stream. So someone asked about my favorite Age of Empires 2 civilization. I wish AJ were here to answer that question honestly, because I don't know. All I know about Age of Empires, really, that I remember, I did play it a lot when I was a kid, when it was newish. All I really remember is the monks that go, whoa, lo, lo. That was my favorite. Just an army of monks that just convert everyone else's units. I never won. Gonna say that get that out of the way. But I mean, I don't know. If I see a list, Age of Empires 2 civs. See if anything rings a bell. Oh my god, there's too many of them. Okay, never mind. There's too many for me to remember. Maybe even just on the logos that are here. Oh yeah, the one with the red X on it. Is that the English? Oh, the Burgundians. I remember that. I remember being like, yeah, I'll click on that logo many, many times. And that makes sense because relics generate extra food in addition to gold, and I liked monks, so I ran around going wololo all day, and that's what I did as a child. That's not the only thing I did as a child, but there was definitely a phase. And then I discovered Civilization, where you get some breathing time, and I much preferred that. Real-time simulators are not my thing. Or real-time strategy, I should say. Turn-based strategy, much more my thing. Much more my thing. Super Mario vs. Rabbids, one of the most underrated Nintendo Switch games. And you cannot tell me I'm wrong. What is a Bruno Idzan? Well, he is a Croatian young man who has been playing in Sweden the last few years, came over to Lincoln this season, and he is... I don't know where the scoring is coming from at even strength with him with Lincoln. I say this a lot. Like, I come in with guys like Bruno. I've been watching him for a few years. I liked him going into last year. I prime myself to like him. I came in going, wow, okay, this guy's coming to the USHL. I've seen him for a few years and seen him be an interesting player, but he has just absolutely popped off with Lincoln. I don't really see an NHL player there at that level, especially for a +1, like a D+1 undrafted guy from last year. I don't know. Like, he's got a pretty decent finishing ability, like the ability to just put the puck where the goalie is not. He's got a pretty good sense of that. But like, I don't really know if the skating or the, sort of defensive play or anything like that is really up to snuff at this level right now. But he is, he's a fun player. Like, does he get drafted? Maybe. Is he ever going to be the best player that I would jump to pick? Probably not. I mean, I don't know. I will give a shout out to Thibaut Châtel. If you don't follow him, he's on Twitter, I believe, only. But he runs a service that tracks data or analyzes data for the Swiss National League. And I was looking at some of his data today, and just checking out my son, Ludwig Johnson, who is just having a rip of a season this year in the Swiss top division. And that's a guy where I'm going, I am so significantly more interested in that guy as a +1 than Bruno Idzan. But, I mean, hey, he's probably going to play pretty well for Lincoln down the stretch. And, I feel like he could be an interesting college player, but I haven't seen enough of him where I'm going, okay, this is an NHL draft pick guy for sure. He just popped out of nowhere for a good reason, right? Like, I don't know. I think long term his scoring might level off a little bit, but anyway, he's a good player, but maybe one I just sort of keep an eye on, and maybe in college I see how things go. Do you have thoughts on Yanni Newman's first few games? So I honestly haven't seen them. I haven't seen them yet, but it is on my list. So, I mean, I'm really happy he's in the NHL right now. I mean, based on not seeing them, I'm going to assume that there was a lot of resilience in his game maybe a couple of good shots on net, some good northbound skill. He's a good power guy who's getting a couple of games because he earned it. But yes, I have not checked it out, but I will, because I've been meaning to. Honestly, since the last show that was asked, I forgot. That's what happens. But you know what? Just so I don't forget, I'm going to pull out my, on St. Patrick's Day. It's not green, unfortunately. I didn't dye my notebook green like Chicago dyes their river. But I will write this down, because I open this almost every day. I will write this down in big letters. Watch Yanni Newman in NHL. There. It's in the book. That means it's going to happen, and I'm being held to it. So there's that. Okay. Potential late first-round centers. Who is your favorite between Jacoby Wozniak, Brady Martin, and Jack Nesbitt? Oh, boy. I mean, the one I have ranked highest is Brady Martin, because I think he projects the easiest to the NHL. I have Martin at 23. Here, I'll flip over and we can look. So I've got Brady Martin here at 23, which, I mean, relative to the rest of the world is low. But I just feel like he's a pretty prototypical sort of third line center who will get the job done in the NHL. He's physical enough. He's probably a good sort of possession guy who can sort of muck it up, right? He being in Toronto and having gone to the Leaf game last week, I think there are a bit of similarities there to like a Scott Laughton, where there's just a lot of physicality in his game. Maybe not the most skilled guy or the best finisher, but not, never going to score. But definitely a very projectable NHL player. Yves Wozniak I have in the first round now, which I didn't expect based on the first few months of the year, but he has really turned it on, I think, in the last 3 or 4 months. I don't know what happened, but he's starting to get his feet under him. He's skating harder. He's faster. He's applying more pressure to guys off the puck end with it. I don't know. I feel like if he's a guy that goes 20th overall, I might not do that. But I do, in terms of tools, I think Yves Wozniak might be the best of the three that you mentioned. Nesbitt, I honestly just don't have ranked, to be perfectly honest. I don't know. Nesbitt is one of these guys where people like him and bring him up and go, hey, he might be a first round pick and blah, blah, blah. Whenever that happens and I just go, I just haven't really seen that out of the guy, I don't just assume that and continue, right? Like I always go back and check and see for myself. And I still agree, right? I still agree with myself that Nesbitt is a guy who, again, I think if you like guys like Brady Martin, where they're sort of good, I hate to use the word plug, but I mean it in a positive way. Like they literally will plug holes in the lineup and like just be good sort of defense first, net out style guys who can move the puck okay. Nesbitt is fine at that. That he has, he's not the most skilled guy. He's not the best finisher or anything like that, but he is a 200-foot impact guy who, to me, I don't see as positively as Brady Martin, and I feel like he really the issue with him is like he plays kind of like an NHL third liner, but in the OHL, and I feel like that's not generally a thing that works out unless you just kind of make it work out and you give him enough time and reps and you just play him. Like I feel like it's just something where I go, yeah, he doesn't. For me at least, if I'm building a team, I'm not really interested in drafting a lot of junior hockey level players who kind of play that NHL third line role, and I kind of can't really see them at the NHL level playing that way. I just feel like it's a little bit more difficult than is led on. But I mean, I've been wrong before. But for me, definitely Brady Martin and Yves Wozniak are the two guys I'd focus on of those three. And I'd lean Martin more just because of how projectable he is. But Yves Wozniak, I think the tools are more interesting, like the skating ability and the sort of puck play and everything is a little bit better. But in terms of projecting to the NHL, I'm not nearly as sold. Who is one player you think NHL teams are going to underrate in this coming draft, and who's one player they're going to overrate? I mean, I don't know. Okay, I think people are underrating Victor Eklund. I think NHL teams will look at him and go, he's not the biggest guy in the world. There isn't a ton of like diversity in his game, but to me, he's exactly the type of player you want in the playoffs for me. And I feel like he might get underrated. I hate to keep bringing this guy up, but he keeps getting brought up in my world. And that's Kayshawn Aitchison. I don't have him ranked. I did another game of him today. I've done well over an hour of 5-on-5 tracked data for him, and it just has continued to not be very positive. Like I watch him and I go, he's just not my type of guy. And I know I've said before, like the data doesn't always tell the whole story, blah, blah, blah. But I mean, it's really hard for me to square this circle, right? And again, I will also say, like, when I track data, a lot of it is often against the best competition at their level I can find. So I'm not watching Kayshawn Aitchison play the Peterborough Petes, right? Like he should be a very good player against against a team like Peterborough, who are younger and in a different developmental spot. But I mean, with Aitchison, it's like, well, he's a guy who's advertised as scoring a lot of goals. In the games I've done, he barely factors into his team's offense at all and doesn't really get that many offensive opportunities at all for his team. And, he's a guy who is advertised as a very physical player, but I track hits, and he doesn't really throw any hits from the games I've again. Maybe again I'm just getting sampled, but it's been shift after shift after shift. There are plenty of opportunities for things to break, right? Like even just getting a shot on net or a shot attempt, right? Like I track shot attempts. He doesn't even need to hit the net, and he's very low in that number as well. So for me, it's just a matter of like, look, I've done my homework. I've come to my own conclusion. An NHL team will look at him and go, we have our own reasons for drafting him wherever, and we think we can turn him into whatever. And I go, okay, like okay, like this isn't EA NHL 25, right? Like if a team genuinely believes that person to person they can really do something with that guy, then so be it, right? But I have my own philosophy. I do my own homework. I do my own thing. And I feel like that is a great example of that. In terms of underrated players, I also feel like another one might be Ben Kindle. I think he's a guy who there's a lot of really positive things he brings to the game. The only things he really doesn't is he's not the biggest guy in the world, and he doesn't play like the biggest guy in the world. But to me, he's exactly the type of center that I would want. And he's exactly the type of guy that I think really, really works out, especially if you have more of a, progressive-minded team that's not so focused on like, well, your centers have to be also very physical and all these things, right? Like they go, you know what? If we can have more of a finesse guy up the middle who's more positionally aware and supportive and smart and just moves the puck really, really well, but not slow. Like Kindle's not slow. It's just a matter of like what he brings to the table. And in my mind, the only thing he doesn't is this sort of physical edge to his game, which if you're looking for that, he's not the one. But for me, if you don't really care and it's maybe later in the first round and he's still there, I mean, he's one of my favorite players in the whole draft. So yeah, I mean, those are some ones off the top of my head. I mean, there are also just guys I have that I just love, who I think are just underrated, that I just can't stop talking about, who I love in the Brunus boys, Michael Sverchek, Gustav Hillstrom, and to a lesser extent, Leo Sundqvist. All three of those guys are in the SHL off and on. Some of them Sverchek full-time, and I think Sundqvist full-time now too. And I mean, no one else has those guys anywhere close to where I have them, but I look at them and I go, when I watch those guys and then go to other guys in that range, guys like Cameron Schmidt or Bill Zonin or Radim Murtka or whatever, especially Sverchek and even Hillstrom to a certain extent, I think those guys bring just as much to the game in different ways as the other guys, and they're already playing pro hockey in Sweden. Hillstrom is really smart, and I think the way he uses his skating is, like a combination of skating, smarts, and skill up the middle. He's great. He keeps up with play really, really well and just covers ice really, really well. There's a lot to love about his game, and every time I watch him, the points obviously aren't humongous, but I watch him and I'm going, I think you could work with this guy, and he plays like a guy who really understands the game. Okay, found out the Habs have 9 picks in the first 4 rounds this year. If you were Hughes, would you weaponize and try to trade for a young player, trade up in the draft, or stay put? Oh, sorry, we jumped ahead a little. Would you trade Michael Hage in a mid-first for a second-line center? I wouldn't. I think with Michael Hage, I don't know if I would sign him right now, But again, it depends on who is available, right? But teams don't generally trade top 6 centers, right? And they don't trade it for nothing. I mean, it depends on who is out there, honestly. But personally, like, I really like Michael Hage's potential as at least a good third line center. And I think a mid-first round pick could be a pretty decent pickup this year. But I see where you're coming from. I totally see where you're coming from, because if you're the Habs, you're kind of not really super interested in just like drafting anymore. And they have a ton of draft picks again this year. So, but again, you like just drafted Michael Hage, and like the story is almost too perfect, right? He grew up a Habs fan. You know, his dad passed away, and that was a big motivator for him, and a big motivator in terms of his hockey career and everything. Like that kind of pushed him and put him in a place. And the Habs also sort of bought into that. And I feel like giving up on that and trading that in a year is not a great idea. Like, you know, why would you draft him if you're just going to sort of rip his heart out that way? But anyway, for me, like, yeah, I do think, though, there is maybe a trade to be made at the draft where you might be able to buy low on someone with a pick. You know, like if Anaheim really is done with a Trevor Zegras, I'd be ringing the phone off the hook if I'm Ken Hughes and going, who do you want? You know, like, can we give you picks? You know, can we give you some picks, or defense, like a defenseman that you want, like a Logan Mailloux or something? I mean, they have a ton of defensemen already, but like, try to work something else out there. I guess my point is, like, I try to keep Hage as much as I can, because I do believe in like a good developmental environment for a player being really important, and the situation that Montreal put him in, I think, has been beneficial and really positive. So I wouldn't move him, especially within a year of drafting him. And he's had a really good year with Michigan as well. I found out the Habs have 9 picks in the first 4 rounds this year. If you were Habs, if you were Hughes, would you weaponize and try to trade for a young player, trade up in the draft, or stay put? So I don't think I would trade up. Oh, I have a visitor. We're dog sitting. I don't think I would trade up. I would see what's out there. Again, like we just said, I mean, the Habs are kind of in a position where they don't have to make all those draft picks. I think if you kept them all, you could do some serious damage in this year's class. Like, I think there are guys that'll be there in the second round that are good bets. It's not a very amazing draft class, but I do think that there are players that I think are really solid that probably will be available later on than they should for one reason or another. But that's no guarantee, right? A lot of the time when you trade draft picks, by just the odds of it, the player you get in return is probably better. So if you can add a young player for some draft picks, then by all means, like, I would do it. I think if I'm the Habs, I see what's out there. I can't tell you what's out there. I don't know. But if I'm the Habs, like, if I'm Ken Hughes, I'm thinking, I don't want my team to be in the lottery anymore. Like, 2026, we should be a team that's pushing for the playoffs. That should be, I think, a reasonable expectation, right? The Habs have been not so good on paper for a while. They've drafted a ton, and they don't have to trade all 9 of those picks, right? Like, even if they trade 3 of them, that's still 6 picks in the first 4 rounds. Like, that's dumb. Like, that's a good haul no matter which way you slice it. So that's what I would do. I'd see what's out there and see if anything could be done by maybe not taking names off my roster or out of the stable. This is obviously way too early, but are you intrigued with next year's defense class with notables like Villeneuve, Verhoff, and Lynn? Yeah. I mean, this year's defense class is not amazing, I don't think. It's solid, I think. There's a lot of solid players, but I don't think it's amazing. And with Villeneuve, I don't know. I see him as, like, the fun factor of a guy like Jackson Smith is there in Villeneuve, but even more so. Like, I don't know about Villeneuve's defensive game, at least not yet. He is quite small and quite thin. But, I mean, in terms of just dynamic and skilled offense, I mean, we're watching what Lane Hudson is capable of in the NHL. I mean, Villeneuve is awesome. I have tons of fun watching him. And he probably would be ranked very high for me if he was available this year as one of the better offensive defensemen available. I love him. Verhoff, I haven't gotten a really great read on him. I like Lynn a little more, just with how smart he is and how much he plays, how smart he plays the game and moves the puck really well. And I think that with a year of development for both him and Verhoff, right? Like, if there's a good summer of skating development with both of those guys, I could see it being a coin flip between those two, at least right now. I'm not amazingly familiar. We're trying to track down Joel Henderson. I asked him to be on the show tonight, but he's busy with friends, so he's unavailable. But, in the future, we'll have him on, and he'll probably be able to shed more light on these guys, and I'll also go in with more of a familiarity with these guys. So you can follow up then. But yeah, I mean, I from what I've seen of Villeneuve, and I've seen a lot more of him than Verhoff and Lynn, just because of Villeneuve playing with guys like Carbonneau, and Lynn, I see a little bit with Cameron Schmidt, and Verhoff a little bit with Cole Reshney, but I don't have a good enough read on those guys to like really put myself out there. But I do like them all. They're all very, very good players. How do Gavin McKenna's numbers compare to Michael Misa's this season? So I don't have Gavin McKenna tracked this year. I generally track just draft eligible guys. But Michael Misa, I mean, I'll pop over there because, I mean, it's really, I mean, I have a game of his to do later, probably this week. I'm going away to the woods for the weekend, and so I will definitely be hunkered down and doing whatever it is that you do in the woods. Usually includes board games and sitting by a fireplace, but but yeah, Michael Misa is phenomenal. There really is not that many areas at all where I can look at him and go, I can poke holes in your game here. I mean, obviously, every player. I'll quote Kevin Costner from the wonderful Mount Rushmore of sports scouting movies, Draft Day, as the GM of the Cleveland Browns. He says everybody has a weakness, or everybody has what was it? Like he was talking about how other football players, it's like they're Hall of Famers, but they always have holes poked in their game for whatever reason, or there was always something that you could get on them or something. Nobody's perfect. And so Michael Misa is not the most physical guy in the world, but I just don't care. Like, I don't care, because no matter which way you slice it, his results are just outstanding, and it's not like he can't handle pressure. It's just that in terms of applying it, he doesn't, like, that's not really his brand of game. That's not really his style. And just in terms of like forechecking and pinning pucks in the offensive zone, he's so good at it that it doesn't really matter. Like, the results are just so bonkers in so many areas. And I love him. I think he's great. I think he's got tons of potential. I mean, I'm sure Gavin McKenna's offensive numbers are also extraordinary, but I don't have any track data that's detailed. But with Misa, big time. There's a lot to love. 10 years from now, when Artyom Levshinov wins his third Norris Trophy and his first Hart Trophy, how do you think it'll change how you evaluate prospects? Well, it'll be more draft guys who are not awesome at 18 and just play them. I don't know. Look, I've seen Chicago. I've seen two of Levshinov's games that he's played with Chicago. I think I saw his first one and the game he played the other day. Was it against No. He played a game the other day. Was it Vancouver? Oh my God, I can't remember. But I watched a game the other day and really tried to pay attention to him in the NHL. And I saw people writing about him and how good he's been and all this stuff. And I look at the details and I look at the defensive side of the game as well. I just don't see it. I just don't. Like, he moves the puck okay in the offensive zone. Like, you see it. He skates okay in the offensive zone. He moves the puck and cycles the puck. They put him on the power play. And again, like, the power play, I don't really care. Like, obviously a power play in the NHL is not the easiest thing in the world, 100%. But you still have, 25% more players on the ice than the other team. So you have a very big advantage. And so for Levshinov, I'm not super interested in him running a power play because you play it 5-on-5 most of the time. And I felt that once the puck was outside the offensive zone, it was the Artyom Levshinov I remember. So for me, I mean, obviously, like, taking a while to learn how to play defense is not abnormal, but it's a matter of, like, would it change anything if he's a 3-time Norris winner? Well, I mean, I guess, but, like, it doesn't change the fact that, like, my eyeballs didn't lie and the data I had also didn't lie. Like, I kept going back to back on him, and I know other people did as well. It's just a matter of, like, okay, sometimes things happen. Guys evolve, right? But for me, I always go back with defensemen to the whole thing I did at OddHack a few years ago, the Ottawa Hockey Analytics Conference, where there are just as many really good defensive value players in the NHL who went undrafted and were free agents than there were second, third, fourth, fifth round, sixth round picks. And first round picks, it's only a slight improvement. Like defense in the NHL draft is very noisy. So yeah, I think that it's kind of like, if that happens, then great, good for him. But I don't think, because I think the lesson for me has always been, the big one for me over the years has been value really good defensive players. Like if there are players who are very, very good at stopping play and being that sort of off-puck guy, that's very valuable too. I didn't see that in Levshunov last year, right? I just didn't. So does that, do I just go, well, okay, like maybe I will then forego a lot of sort of current talent and hope for development and give him 10 years, right? Fair enough, right? But you got to think about it in the context of the actual NHL draft, and in it's second overall. Like, again, Ivan Demidov probably coming over after this season is finished to Montreal. If he was going to Chicago, like how much have been people moaning and wailing about Connor Bedard not having anyone to play with? Like maybe Demidov is your or maybe Levshunov is your multi-Norris trophy winner, but I don't know. I still just cannot get over the fact that you had an opportunity to pair an elite finisher with an elite playmaker, and you went with like a middle pair, 200-foot, power play guy. Fair enough. I've been wrong before. But I don't think it would change anything, honestly. I don't think, because there's no way I look at him last year and I go, that guy's going to win 3 Norris trophies one day. That wasn't a thing that ever crossed my mind, but you never know. Do you think Roger McQueen struggles with possession? Yes. When I see him play, he tries to play hero and split the defense, which doesn't work, and sometimes fumbles the puck. Oh, sorry, just making sure the dog wasn't eating a thing that she shouldn't have been eating, but she's being good. She's chewing on we call it her bonus. She's chewing on her bonus. Anywho, let's keep moving here. Yeah. So with McQueen, again, I'll show you his data. I have another one ready to go for him. And again, I want to stress his profile is very strange because he was injured for a long time, and obviously it kind of screws things up. He comes back from injury. It's not the best situation. But I mean, with him, I agree with you. I think McQueen is a guy where it's similar to Levshunov. If he goes 3rd overall, 4th overall, fair, fine. I can't say that you shouldn't do it, but it is a risk, I think, both for injury purposes and for just like what he brings on the table now. I mean, he's a guy who is hitting guys. He's a guy who is causing turnovers in the offensive zone, but he's a guy who, the possession numbers haven't been good. His defensive transition numbers are not good. His offensive transition numbers are just below average, I would say. There's not a whole lot where I go, this is what I know he's going to be in the NHL. And when I talk to people about him, I always get told, like, well, it's not what he is now. It's what he's going to be in 5 years, 6 years, 7 years. And I go, okay, but in terms of risk tolerance, where do you take that in the draft, right? Like, I don't know. Because I also see a guy, the more problematic thing for me is I kind of see a guy there who he's really big, and at times he can play big, but he kind of plays a lot more like he's always been bigger than everybody else and can kind of get away with more just by being big. And I feel like that advantage goes away real fast after you leave the WHL, right? Like the game gets real fast, real quick, real physical, real quick. The injury he had, like, it can get aggravated by more physical activity. I hope he's healthy. Like, I hope Brandon is taking care of him. I'm not saying they're not, but a big boy like that with back injuries, like, look, I'm not saying this is what's going to happen, but Caden Lindstrom had back problems, got drafted by Columbus 4th overall, has not played a game yet, I don't think, right? He has not played. Or at least he didn't for a very long time. And so if Roger McQueen, you know, Lindstrom has the luxury of having next season. Yeah, he hasn't played a game. So Lindstrom has the luxury, if he wanted to go back to the WHL next year, right? Technically, McQueen does as well if he, say, is injured for stretches of next season as well. But at his age, and if you're talking like 5th or 6th overall draft pick, sending him back as an overager in the WHL, like, I guess that's what you do. But, you know, that's an AHL aged player if you're a high end NHL draft pick. Generally, guys drafted in the top 10 don't get sent back for an overage season in the CHL. So I don't know if that's what, obviously, I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but the developmental case there is just really questionable. So for me, again, with risk, it's about risk tolerance. Like, where am I opening myself up to the risk that I think is there? I honestly, after watching McQueen a whole bunch this year, I don't know the answer to that question. I really don't. I went into the last game I saw of him going, I have my thoughts about him since before he got injured, but I'm going to be completely neutral. And like, by the time when he comes back, I'm going to sit back and I'm going to go, all right, but what is he bringing to the table now? Right? Like, keeping in mind he's injured, keeping in mind he's coming back from injury. What do I see? You know, and I had all the time in the world to be like, you know what? This is a guy who I might go with in the top 10 because I can see the potential there. But again, it's similar to like that. If you draft it, like if you say, I'm going to draft him 5th overall and we're going to leave him, and in 10 years, he'll be a top line center for us. I can't disagree. Like, you're saying a hypothetical where I can't say it's not going to happen. Right. But I just feel like I'm not comfortable making that kind of an assumption, especially in the context of like the potential value you might be saying no to with guys that maybe bring a little more. But to answer your question, again, I'm rambling here. To answer your question, the answer is yes. I've seen very similar things. And again, he's been big for years. I think I asked Joel, he was like 6'3" in his WHL draft year, something like that. So he's been big for a long time. So it's not like he just grew 5 inches in the last 12 months and he's still learning how to play in that frame. Like, he's been this big for a long time. And I feel like if I'm a coach and I'm trying to get a guy like that to be more impactful in a game, like based on how he plays, like it might be a bit of a tricky one for me at least. And maybe I'm wrong, but that's been he's a weird one. Any Steam spring sale recommendations? Oh boy. Let's see. I mean, obviously my algorithm is serving serving me stuff right off the top here that I, you know, that I would probably get anyway. Like, my algorithm is serving me stuff like what do we got here? It's a good question. I do want to try. It's not on sale, but I have been. It's since I'm also a degenerate who plays Balatro a little bit, or Balatro or whatever it is. Nubby's Number Factory is going a little bit viral. I saw it on my TikTok a little while ago, and I do want to try it, but it's not on sale. But it's also $6.50. So, well, there's a demo. You know what? I'm gonna get the demo, and we're gonna try it. That's what we're gonna do. I don't think Civ 7 is on sale, and I am a Civ 7 truther. It is not on sale. So never mind. But I'm a Civ 7 truther. I've enjoyed it. I'm enjoying it a lot, and I don't care what anyone says. Oh, the BioShock games are on sale. If you haven't played BioShock, do that. Oh, they're not on sale yet, it looks like. I don't know. Steam, there's too many buttons to click on Steam these days. There's a 2K spring sale. BioShock was featured in the banner, so I thought it was on sale. Maybe it'll be on sale at some point. But what else have I been? I don't know. Like, honestly, I've been playing No Man's Sky and Civ 7 pretty much exclusively for a while now. No Man's Sky is 60% off. Honestly, $32 for No Man's Sky, I would do that. I have put in how many hours? Well over 190 hours. It is awesome. I know it had its day of horror, its days of horror when it came out. One of my favorite games ever made now, honestly. Okay, what do we got here? Thoughts on Ville Koivunen? He's been tearing up the American League this year. What do you think his impact in the NHL looks like? Ville Koivunen's my boy. He was a guy I had in my first round when he was drafted, I think 2021. And, I mean, I don't think he's going to be a huge line driver in the NHL. I don't think that's his job. But I do think he's going to be a really smart middle six guy who, you put him with skilled players, he can work with that. You put him with more physical players, he can probably move the puck with them pretty well, He just sees the ice really well, passes really well, makes plays at a good pace of play. And I do really like him. I think he's just a guy who's developed. And, he's not the most amazing skater or the most skilled guy in the world, but he gets around it by just making the right play so often. I could see it being a really impressive, potential player in the NHL, right? What I know about Kyle Dubas is Kyle Dubas just loves his smart guys. AJ and I joke about it all the time. I mean, as a joke, as two nerds, but Kyle Dubas seems to love players who are kind of nerds about hockey. And I think Koivunen, I've never met him, but I think Koivunen is that type of player. Easton Cowan, kind of a nerd when it comes to playing hockey, and he was a draft pick for Toronto. So Fraser Minton as well, draft pick of Toronto, kind of on the ice, a bit of a nerd. And so Koivunen is very similar, just a really smart guy who doesn't really need to be extremely quick or extremely skilled, but just reads things really well and just keeps marching the play up the ice. That Tom Brady style, if you will. And I love that about him. I just think he's one of those guys that has that in such a beneficial way that it could work as a middle six, maybe third line winger, and a pretty decent one, depending on who you play him with. Have you seen Tanner Lamb and Kitchener? If you have, what do you think of him? I love Tanner Lamb. I don't have him ranked. I don't think. I do not. But I think he is one of the most fun players I won't have on my list. I've seen him in Kitchener 5 times now, something like that, 4 or 5 times, and he's so fun. He's electrifyingly skilled, agile as heck, really fun player to watch. I just, again, the NHL for guys like him, the bar is so high. He's not super fast, and I don't think he's that great under pressure either, unless he can sort of stick handle his way out of problems. And I just don't, I just don't really see that in him in the future. He kind of brings a little bit of, from what I remember, and this is dating myself a little bit, but this was a long time ago, but kind of what I remember of a Vitaly Abramov, where it's you watch him and you go, this guy is bananas good. He's going to score 100 points in the OHL one day. He was in the queue, but Tanner Lamb's in the OHL. So you can look at him and go, he's going to score a ton in junior. He could be a really interesting player to see develop and whatever. Is he an NHL player, though? I don't know. Maybe, but I don't know. And Abramov has gone on to have a pretty decent career elsewhere. But the point is the NHL. And I feel with Lamb, he's small and slender and not that great under pressure, but really electrifying and really skilled. And just I feel he can rip apart the OHL in the future. But I don't know if I would draft him in the NHL. With the NCAA into the playoffs, which prospects would you actually recommend to go pro? Greer has specifically mentioned Cameron Lund. That's a very good question. So let me take a quick look at who even is eligible amongst those players. So let me filter my database for NCAA guys and sort by age. I don't know why I said that way. I would think Cole O'Hara is going to get a deal. That's the first name that jumps out to me for, I think it's Detroit. My son, Ayrton Martino, is having a great season. I would love to see him go to Dallas and Texas, I guess. Well, the Texas Stars, I'd like to see Dallas maybe give him a go because he has just carried that Clarkson team forever. I feel like Zeev Bouillon might be a guy that gets out of college and Minnesota plucks him up. Ryan Leonard, I think, is a pretty obvious candidate. I wouldn't go Stiga. I wouldn't go Bovair. Isaac Howard, I imagine, will come out. It's entirely possible. Cameron Lund, I could see as well, like you mentioned. Tom Willander, maybe. I think he's looked great with Boston University this year, and I feel like in Vancouver, like he may be a benefit on that back line at some point in the near future. But I don't think there's a rush to pull him out, but I would give him a good look. Outside of that, I mean, someone mentioned on the show on Thursday that Oliver Moore might get a contract and get out of college. I don't know. I'd like to see him another year in college, but hey, I mean, if they want to bring him along quicker than I would, then I will not complain. I think that's okay with me. Yeah, Ayrton Martino's on here, I would say. And yeah. Some good players, though. Maybe Drew Fortescue, but maybe. Yeah, Fortescue's still kind of young, but based on what I've seen of him over the last couple of years, like I could see that being a thing. Eamon Powell, I think, has been pretty decent as well for Boston College. I mean, I think he's too old, but maybe Eamon Powell's a guy that might get a look. Like he might be too old to even go back, but. Yeah, I've liked Eamon Powell as well. Ethan Edwards might be a guy as well that leaves and quietly kind of marches his way into the league somehow, some way, because I've liked him with Michigan as well. There's a few. There are some good players that might come out of college this year. Okay. Thoughts on Ivan Arkhipov, if you've seen him? Well, based on how I said his name, I think you know the answer to this. Ivan Arkhipov. Yeah, I have not seen this guy. Oh, he's on Dynamo Moscow. So I probably have seen him at some point, but it doesn't ring a bell. So I'll put him on the list and we will take a look at him. How about that? We cool with that? Anyway, continuing. Hi, I'm from Arkansas. Hello from Arkansas. How are you? Given where we are in the scouting season, what draft is the 2025 compared to in terms of talent in the past 5 years back to 2019? Let me see here. I will let me do this. Here. How about we do this? I'm going to quickly go through all my things here and take a quick look. The first thing that jumps to my mind is 2021. So we got 20, 21, 22, 23, and where's 2024? There it is. Okay. So, yeah. So I'm just going to order by my ranking, if I can. Of course I can't right now. Good. Great. Whatever. Okay, we'll do that then. We'll do it live. I mean, we are doing it live. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say 2020. Maybe. But I don't think so. I don't think 2020. I think I might. I think I might like the middle group a little bit more than 2021. Yeah, I think so. 2022. I think 2022 might be an interesting parallel. Yeah, where there were a few pretty good players available at the top, like some really potential game-breaking players available at the top, but then it kind of really opened up and there was a whole bunch of guys that might all fill different roles and everything. I mean, 2023 it was really top heavy and then it just kind of fell off. I think there was a lot of solid players, but like this year I think the tippy top is really good. And then it kind of falls off into sort of role players real quick. So maybe 2023 3 maybe might make sense, you know? Like, I look at my 2023 list, I had Luca Cagnoni. I guess I can show it. Because I don't think 2023 was the year I published my final list or anything. I kept it all private. So if you haven't seen it, here's my 2023 list. If you're a subscriber, you get access to this as an archive. But, like, I had Oscar Fisker Molgaard and Luca Cagnoni, and I remember liking all these players. Luca Pinelli and Denver Barkey were in my first round. I remember liking all these players. Timur Mukhanov, I still believe, he's playing fourth line minutes in the KHL, but I still believe in that kid. But, like, beyond that, I mean, yeah, like, there's a lot of good players on this list. But the top end is really, really special. Bedard, Michkov, Fantilli, Carlson. And from there, I think this whole group is all really solid players. So maybe 2023 is kind of what makes the most sense to me. But every year is different, every year is a little different. As a Penguins fan, a lot of the discourse surrounding the fan base now is how this recent stretch is ruining the draft position. Do you subscribe to the notion you need top 5 picks to turn it around? No. Next. No, I mean, honestly, no. I think, look, I mean, what about the New York Rangers drafting Alexis Lafreniere, right? What about the LA Kings? I love Quinton Byfield. I love him to death. But, like, look at what Tim Stützle is doing in Ottawa, or Marco Rossi in Minnesota, or Jake Sanderson in Ottawa. Like, I love Quinton Byfield, but, teams that didn't draft there, I mean, obviously those are also still really high picks. The teams that didn't draft in those first couple of spots still did really well. You know what I mean? Marco Rossi, I think, was 7th, 8th overall, something like that. Maybe even later. I don't even know. So, I mean, look, like, I look at what Minnesota got out of Zeev Buium last year in the middle of the first round, right? Like, he's a player that I had in my top 5. I think if you do your homework, you could end up with really good players. And I also feel like people overrate just how impactful these, like, really, really high-end players will be in the NHL, right? Like, not saying they're bad players. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm saying, like, not everyone can be a Hall of Famer. Not everyone can be a first-line center. Not everybody can score 120 points. That's just not how it works. So for me, I look at this year's class. I will say, I look at this year's class and past 5 or maybe 6 or 7, it does, you're probably looking at maybe instead of a second-line center who is real good at hockey, or a fine 1C in the NHL, you're maybe looking at that versus a pretty good third-line center, like a really good one, or a guy who can score in bunches but may not be the best defensive player, or whatever, pretty quickly. You get into that space pretty quickly. So in that sense, it does make it more difficult. But I don't know. I don't subscribe to the notion that, like, you have to tank in order to be good. And I mean, generally, Kyle Dubas is pretty good at finding players, so I wouldn't worry too much about it. I see where you're coming from, though, right? Like, obviously, you would want a James Haggins, right? You want a Michael Misa. You want a Matthew Schaefer. But, I mean, I don't know. I look at a Victor Eklund, and he is on average on my list right now, ranked 7th. I mean, if you can, and he's 4 for me. Like, if you can get a Victor Eklund at 7 or 8, I think you've got a really good player. I think you've got a really good player there. Even if he's just a winger, I think he's a really good one who complements a lot of different players really well. Make me feel good about Chicago taking Martone at 3. Well, he's a very good playmaker, very good passer, very skilled, big, pretty good skater, but, like, not the highest pace or high energy guy out there. I mean, he's a smart kid. We met him. We had the pleasure of meeting him and interviewing him, and he came off very, very positive. Like, he's a guy who I think he wears a letter for a reason at his age, right? Like, he's a guy who I think teammates want to fight for and, like, play for and all that. And I mean, that does have some level of value, right? And that's not to say he's not a good player, right? Like, he's a really, really talented, skilled offensive hockey player. But, I look at him and he's pretty much no matter which way you slice it, he's just very good. Like, I don't think he's awesome. I'm still getting used to quarterbacking this thing on my own here. He's still not, like, a potential, like, I don't think he's an elite, number one right winger who scores 140 points, right? Like, I don't think that's what he is. But when I look at his data information and I look at everything sort of broken down, everything's just very good. Like, his shot selection, I think, has gotten better over the course of the year, but he's making plays for everyone else. He's passing the puck a ton. He's not missing on a ton of his passes in transition. Like, he's playing very good hockey, very good complementary hockey. And I think that there's value in that. So, like, again, last year, they said no to an Ivan Demidov to being a guy who could feed pucks to Connor Bedard. Could Porter Martone be that guy instead? I think that's entirely possible. It wouldn't be the worst idea I've ever heard. So I think there's that. I admit he is down a little bit from where I had him early in the year. There was moments where I thought maybe he's number 2, maybe number 1. But, he's a very strong top 5 guy in this year's class for me. Really, really strong one for a number of reasons. And I think he'll interview well. And, yeah, I think he'd be a good ad for Chicago. I've recently warmed up to Frondell, likely due to his beast mode run this past month. Are you feeling more comfortable putting him higher if he plays wing? Yes. I said this weeks ago, I think. Oh, that's good stuff. Straight out of the Orkney Islands. Very beautiful there, by the way, if you've never been. Like, if you don't want to go to Iceland because of all the tourists, there are other places to go that exist that are also very quiet and beautiful and similar. Anyway, Anton Frondell. I've seen him as a very good winger this whole stretch. I think that once you allow him to play the more physical role, that more resilient role, and sort of alleviate the defensive responsibility from him, I think that's his best spot to be. Could he be a center? For sure, right? Like, I think he could be a very, very good, third line NHL center, right? Maybe second line as a 200-foot, possession-focused guy. But I think that to utilize what he's best at, you kind of let him be more of a... I've said for a long time that he's like an elite complementary guy. Like, he's a guy who works off of faster guys really well, or more skilled guys really well, or more wrecking ball style players really well, right? Like, he does these things where it's like, let's say a teammate is tied up along the boards with someone, and Frondell might not be the guy that's also hammering him into the boards, but the puck comes free for a half second. Frondell will put it out in front and find a way to score a goal, or set up a goal, right? Or he'll, capitalize on some chaotic situation really, really well. He does a lot of things, I think, that project really well to the NHL, and I think him as a winger makes a ton of sense. If I were that's kind of where I would think he would be. I would try him at center because if it works, centers are very valuable. But my expectation would be that as an NHL player, being a winger might put him in the best position to be as successful as I think he could be. Will Carter Klippenstein go before the 6th round? That is a very specific question. Is he like your brother or something? Like, because I also have not seen Carter Klippenstein, so I don't know. Yeah, like I haven't. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe we'll ask Joel. That's a question for Joel Henderson, but he's on the list now too with Ivan Arkhipov for later viewing. Okay, where were we here? What's the worst player comparison you've heard so far in the 2025 draft class? It's a good question, because I also don't really... I don't pay too much attention to others. What I do is really... I put their rankings in a database, so I'm interested in that. I feel like there was a couple that Corey Pronman threw out there on his last ranking that made me go a little bit cross-eyed, maybe. Let me see here. No, it's all right. The site's taking a while to load, but there it is. Look, I think he had some bangers in here somewhere. Oh, I'm logged into the wrong account. Whatever. The point is, like, I don't really pay too much attention to that because, number one, it just throws me off. Like, I just kind of go, all right. I mean, maybe, I don't know. And I do it sometimes myself. Like, I make player comparisons myself sometimes. But only insofar as, like, style of play. I don't know. Because also, like, the other thing... It's really tricky because, like, it's something I don't really pay too much attention to, but it's really tricky because I lost my train of thought, but it is tricky because you don't want to put too much on the player in terms of expectations. You don't want to hype up. Obviously, some people just want to hype players up and get the clicks and everything. Fair enough, but like that's not really my thing. I like to look at a player and go, here's what they are, here's what they aren't, what could they be? You know, where and try, you know, you can't predict the future, but you can kind of go, well, you know, like I see this and maybe you could do this and this, cool. So who are they as an NHL player? I don't know. So and so when other people, I see a lot of other people talk about this guy is this type of NHL player, or this guy is this NHL player who's just in an all-star game, or this or this. I'm going, well, maybe, I guess, but it just like gets in my head. So over the years, I've kind of learned to just like tune it all out and just kind of go, look, these people are good for reference of like, here's where the marketplace kind of is on these guys, but that's as far as it goes. The rest is all me, dog, and that's why my list looks ridiculous compared to some others. But what I would always say to that is if anyone ever saw an NHL draft list, they would probably lose their goddamn mind. Okay, when deciding rankings, what sort of small things do you find you use to break the ties? It's a very good question. I go with, first of all, I would go with, do I think this player has a higher NHL ceiling? Like, do I think this player has a more impactful role in the NHL that I could see? Number one. Number two is, if that's kind of equal, like if I kind of look at a guy and I'm going, well, I could see a middle pair defenseman, maybe not on the penalty kill or power play, but a good sort of all situations dude, maybe. Or I see a good third line center, like, which is more valuable? I don't know, like splitting hairs. But then I kind of go, well, who am I more confident is going to get to the NHL at all? Right? Like, who am I looking at and going, yeah, probably going to get there, right? You know, so for example, right, like I have Caleb Desnoyers at 18. I have Eric Nilsson at 19 and Gustav Hillstrom at 20. Now, I love Nilsson and Hillstrom. Eric Nilsson, the problem with him is I love how he plays. Again, super smart puck-moving center who plays physical and plays exactly the style of play that I love to see, but he needs to put on weight. Like, he is very thin and needs to work on his finishing ability. Like, his shot's not amazing. And so that creates things where I'm going, I'm more doubtful of this player, even though I really, really respect what they bring to the table. Gustav Hillstrom. Part of me thinks he could be higher on my list at the end of the season. But I do see a really potentially like limited passing quarterback style center, right? Like, he's more of a 200-foot soft impact, smart, simple, but effective guy. And so Desnoyers I look at and have him slightly, the slightest of margins higher, because I look at him and I go, I see certainty with how smart he is and how, you know, he's not the most physical guy, but he still drives good results, and he still finds, and so does Nilsson. Nilsson drives great results, and Hillstrom drives pretty good results, especially outside the SHL. But Desnoyers has this like playmaking ability as well, this sense of timing that I think those two guys don't quite have, especially Hillstrom. So I feel more confident about a guy like Desnoyers. But then I have Bill Zonin one spot ahead of Desnoyers, which might raise eyebrows. But when I look at Bill Zonin, I go, yeah, but if it's a playoff game, Bill Zonin, I feel like, is a guy who you could get in his ear and he could go over the boards and want to rip your head off. Like, he's competitive and intense and fast, and he's got some skill. I think he makes plays at a higher pace than a guy like Desnoyers, from what I've seen. Desnoyers times things really well, and the game comes to him really well, but that's not what I value. I value guys who make the game go at on their terms, not reactive, but proactive, right? And a guy like Bill Zonin, to me, is very proactive. And so to me, I look at him and I'm going, yeah, if I'm throwing Bill Zonin over the boards and it's, like, if it's a 5 minutes left in crunch time or whatever in the third period and Caleb Desnoyers on the other side, like, I feel like Bill Zonin could just run over a Caleb Desnoyers but maybe Desnoyers could get the puck around him or find a way to move the puck or whatever. But I look at a Bill Zonin and I go, I just see such an interesting guy there. Obviously, it's very close. If you want Desnoyers first, I see why. Those guys are in the same tier for me. But when it comes down to like one spot differences, that's kind of where I come down. Bill Zonin and Cameron Schmidt. I have Schmidt one spot higher. There is a ton of risk with Cameron Schmidt. I accept that fully. And I do think there is a lot of risk. He is a boomer bust, high ceiling kid. But I believe in him. I want to believe in him so bad because I know how competitive he is. He plays like he plays like that ratty jerk of a winger who scores and scores. And I look at him and I go, the skill level, the shot quality, the finishing ability. If you want a guy who can just score, I see that as valuable. And I am a little bit more risk tolerant than I think a lot of people are. And I look at a Cameron Schmidt and I go, I want it to be a thing so bad because he is one of the few players in this draft I would consider like electrifying, like gives you joy at times. There are other times where he certainly does not, but that doesn't matter. At the end of the day, like when it all comes out, like you watch him and you're going, oh my God, this guy, there's so much potential, and in the right environment, he could be lethal, but he has to be in the right environment. Whereas a guy like Zonin, I don't think he has that sort of offensive electrification, so to speak, even though I think he's a good playmaker in transition. But he has that intensity level where I think he would run over a guy like Cameron Schmidt very easily. But so it's difficult, right? Like I'm only one person. I don't have anyone to like push back and make the list different. But that's where I sort of come down, and I think that stretch of players is an interesting example of all of those factors sort of coming into play. But yeah, that's, I don't know. I hope that helps. Does Michael Sverchek have a little bit of Frank Nazar to him? Honestly, that's not a bad point to make. Sverchek, look, I know I don't shut up about him. I know I don't. But geez, I try to watch as much of him as I can in the SHL because I keep going, do I really believe in him this much? Do I really want to do this with him? Do I really want to go down the Gleb Trikazov, Timur Mukanov, trail with this guy who's super high on my board and nobody has anywhere close and he gets drafted in the 5th round or something? But Trikazov was in the junior league in Russia in the Eastern Conference. Mukanov was playing 2nd Division Pro in Russia in the East. But Michael Sverchek has been playing in the SHL. And I believe, I looked at the data on the SHL website, their possession data the other night, and I believe that he is the only draft eligible in the SHL that has played a decent amount of games that has over a 50% expected goals percentage, I think. And I watch him and I'm going, he is a ruthless defensive forward as well. Like you might look at him and go, he's not the biggest guy in the world. Like maybe he stinks defensively. Like you're wrong. Like that guy hunts you down, causes turnovers so quick. Like his stick lifts and the ability to turn the puck around is ruthless, and he's got, he needs to work on the shot. I think the finishing ability needs work, even though historically he does score a lot of goals, but that's like kind of it. Like he that's kind of it. And I really believe that like the board work is really good. He's agile. He is fast in a straight line. Again, I mentioned this on Thursday. I think I clocked him faster than I did Lucas Raymond at that age. So anyway, I don't know. I really do think that there is an interesting player there, and I have him shortlisted for Toronto's pick because if you're not familiar, I do team scouting for basically drafting players where Toronto picks, and he's number 1 on the short list. Like if he's there at Toronto's pick, which I currently have estimated to be like 60th or 59th, we'll see where that goes, to be honest, based on how their season has gone recently, but we'll see. But in that range, I have him penciled in as a guy that might be an option there. And I would be more than happy to make him a late second round draft pick. I think he's got so much potential. And if he's playing SHL minutes and like a decent chunk of them now, he'll probably be there all year next year. And I don't think he looks out of place there whatsoever at all. Him and Hillstrom and Sundqvist, I think all 3 of those guys don't look that out of place in that league. I think Hillstrom needs to get a little stronger and a little bit more agile and skilled, but the smarts are there, and the raw fluidity in his game and the motion and the skating ability, it's all there. It just needs to take a step from here, especially for a center. Like it's not easy to play center in the SHL, but he's going out there and trying it. And yeah, but Sverchek, I don't know. Nazar, it's a little bit different, but I see where you're coming from. I see where you're coming from. How does Milton Ystreen compare to Michael Bronseg-Nugard? They're very different. Honestly, like kind of polar opposites almost. Like Frank Nazar. That pause and then saying the wrong name was kind of funny. Who was it? Yeah, Milton Ystreen. Ystreen's a guy who kind of disappears for stretches and then pops. Like he'll get an opportunity on the rush and he'll just go and go and go and go and go and then make some crazy play in the offensive zone. Michael Bronseg-Nugard, I liked him a lot more. Like the pace of his game, the speed and the physicality was all there, way more than Ystreen. And I think he made plays quicker than Ystreen does. Ystreen is much more of a, he's kind of like a bit of a Justin Carbonneau style of player where it's that give me the puck and I'll do it. Like, give me the puck and I'll take it from here type player. Like, you give him the puck in the defensive zone, he can carry it in the offensive zone, find a way to get it in front of the in front of the net, and maybe someone can finish for him. Like, he's one of those types of players. But, I mean, I like him. He's an interesting player. I've seen him in the SHL here and there, and I just don't see him as on the same level as the guys we just spoke about. I think the natural pace of his game is a little low. His skating is a little bit awkward and clunky. But if he has time to wheel up and you get him in stride and you hit him with a breakout pass clean, he can really take off, and he can be a hard guy to stop. Bronseg-Nugard kind of just played a really projectable and safe middle six, third line NHL winger style of play with the physicality and a bit of skill to make plays, but not that wasn't really his hallmark. So yeah, I think they're quite different, honestly. Who are some good defensive defensemen that can skate well and make a good first pass to exit the zone, but don't have gaudy points or flashy offense and don't have much draft hype as a result? Sean Barnhill in Dubuque is one for sure. I mean, it depends on where people are at with Logan Hensler, but he's becoming one of those for me, I think. Like, he's a late first-round pick for me, but I think he could be one of those as well. I mean, his offense isn't, like, incredible, but it's not bad. But yeah, Sean Barnhill is definitely one of them. And Daniil Skvortsov, potentially. Aaron Dahlqvist, potentially, I like. I really like Rocky Langvart, but he's 5'10", so he's never going to get drafted. But every time I watch Rocky Langvart, he is tons of fun and really, really good, but also not big. But really skates really, really well, makes a really good, like, he does everything that you want. I mean, his offense is a little bit flashy, but who else? Malte Voss in Färjestad is another one I'd throw out there. Who else? This guy's going to be a Bruin. I already know it. This guy's going to be a Bruin. But Carl Otto Magnusson, shout out to Mikhail Holm because we talk about this guy all the time. Carl Otto Magnusson is 6'9", 6'8", D+1 defenseman in Sweden playing for Frölunda's junior team. He is hilarious. Like, he looks like an Ent from the Lord of the Rings while playing hockey. Like, his legs, if you see him skate next to someone who's maybe 5'9", 5'10", his legs look bigger than that player's torso. Like, he is gigantic and skates pretty well. And he can throw hits for sure. He can be physical and everything. I mean, as a 7th round pick that may just be a guy in the NHL who skates okay, he's gigantic, and you work on the finesse side of the game with him, maybe he's an option. But I mean, at this point, I'm pretty certain, because Boston drafted Christian Konstantinsky, who's quite similar, I would say. They drafted him in the 7th or 6th round, so Carl Otto Magnusson is right there, and Boston loves to draft their big boys. Big boys in Boston. But the one I do love the most out of all those is Sean Barnhill. And so, Brian, I feel like if you get the chance, you should go watch him, because I think you'd like him. Moving the puck is not his forte, but he is a guy who I think has good defensive potential. What do you know about Alexis Joseph? Have you seen or heard anything of him? What do you think? I don't know anything about him. I know he's big. The Puck Prep guys talk about him a lot, but he's not their number one guy right now. And I haven't seen enough of him to know this, but I do know that from what I have seen of the QMJHL draft guys this year, which again, I don't see much, but I see it through Puck Preps. This James Scantlebury guy is a real good hockey player, but I don't know anything about Alexis Joseph at all. I know you've talked about not being the biggest fan of Henry Brustevitz's defense. What do you think his biggest weaknesses are, and do you think they potentially could be fixed? So Brustevitz, it's not like Brustevitz kind of has a similar profile to like a Simon Nemec, but Nemec was a much, much, much better puck carrier. Like his forward skating and ability to generate speed and evade guys in stride and on the rush was really fantastic. Henry Brustevitz is much more of a like offensive zone focused like playmaker. He has some really impressive thoughts and creative moments in the offensive zone where you kind of go, oh, that was cool. There you go. But the weaknesses for me, like, and it's similar to Nemec, and I think it's something that definitely is hard to fix. But like, if you have a guy really applying pressure and they're coming wide on you, or they're along the boards or whatever, they drop a shoulder and they're quick, the pivot and following that player into the boards or staying a factor in that interaction with Brustevitz is tough. Like, there's a lot of defensemen I find who have difficulty on those sort of defensive entries and such, where they just don't have that lateral skating ability, that backward skating ability to manage those gaps really well and keep the puck to the outside reliably and everything. Like, guys just get through Brustevitz a lot. And in the defensive zone, like, guys can shake him off along the boards pretty easily. Like, he just doesn't have the quickness in his footwork right now to be as reliable a defensive player as I think he could be. Obviously these things could change, right? Like, I'm not saying it's impossible. He is ranked on my list. But he's a guy who, like, defensemen who are at their best in the offensive zone are always a risk to me. Like, that's the thing I always come back to. So for me, he's a pretty good example of that. Who's going to be the last team to make the playoffs in the East, assuming... what are the indicators of a player who drives play? So, okay, I talked about this a bit on Thursday, but it kind of goes back to what, again, I kind of call the cycle of possession. Like, guys who are really good at that cycle. So what I mean by that is, like, you start with hockey being a game in two states. You either have your team, or you either have the puck or you do not, right? So you can't score if you don't have the puck. So when I say drive play, I mean who drives that cycle, who turns that motor around and around and around, right? I don't have the puck. Can they get it back from an opponent? Yes? Great. On to the next notch. Can they get the puck into the offensive zone, right? Can they get the puck out of their own end and under control, right? Or get the puck into the offensive zone under control? If they can, great. That's another one. They're driving the bus out of danger into the opponent's dangerous area. The number 3 is we have the puck in the offensive zone. Can I make something happen here? Either put it on net myself, make a play, whatever. That's step 3, right? Can they do that? If they can, great. Then you probably don't end up with the puck. You might still have it and you get to go back to this one. But if you end up here and you don't have it again, I want guys who can get the wheel turning again. Like that's what I'm looking for. And so when I see drive play, it's like, can they get the puck off of an opponent? Can they drive it into the neutral zone? Can they drive it into the offensive zone? Can they withstand pressure? Can they fight guys off? Can they get through pressure somehow? I don't care how. Hit guys, skill them up, blow right through them. I don't care. If you can get into the offensive zone, maintain possession of the puck, and just get yourself in that position, you're driving play, right? Can you put pucks into scoring areas? How much are you putting yourself in a position to make that goal differential as wide as possible, right? Because there are guys who don't do those first steps, those key things that get the wheel turning, right? There are guys that just aren't very effective in those areas, right? And that's okay, but you have to work around that. But when it comes to the draft, that's what I value. The guys who can make that wheel turn, right? So that's where I'm coming from with that. Who's going to be the last team to make the playoffs in the East, assuming Ottawa gets in? Toronto. I know, I'm half kidding. But I mean, hey, AJ and I went to the game on Monday night. They did not look, oh my God, they're winning 5-1. Okay, so maybe the Toronto Maple Leafs are going to win the Stanley Cup after all. Oh, look, Nick Robertson scored again. Interesting that. Anyway. But yeah, the last team to make the playoffs. I mean, let's see. In the East, so Florida, I mean, we'll see what happens with Ottawa, but Toronto winning tonight is pretty big if they win. Tampa's also winning, so they would end up 2 points back of Florida. Florida's played an extra game. So that's, I mean, it's not obviously a sure thing, but definitely Montreal, Detroit, Boston, and Buffalo are probably out of it. And then you've got in the other division, Washington is in, obviously, Carolina and the Devils. So really, it'll come down to, you've got Ottawa, the Rangers, Blue Jackets, and maybe the Islanders. Oh, I guess the Habs are also involved there. Like, could the Habs squeak through the Rangers for that last wild card spot? That would be crazy. That would be pretty wild. So there is one wild card spot open, and I don't think Ottawa will be the last one to make it. So it really comes down to like which of maybe the Islanders, Blue Jackets, Rangers, Habs, and maybe the Red Wings, which of those teams could make it. I'll say this. I hope Columbus makes it. I hope they do. Just for the vibes, you know? I hope Columbus can find a little bit of energy. They've obviously lost a few games this last stretch. Not great. But maybe they can capture magic again and have a little run go into the playoffs and get themselves into a playoff round, you know? Like, do it for Johnny. Do it for the young guys on the team. You get some playoff experience for guys like Fantilli and Marchenko and Voronkov and all those young guys who have done so much work for them. It would just be nice, you know? No disrespect to the Rangers or the Habs or the Red Wings or whatever. The Red Wings would be kind of fun to see there too. So would the Habs. But honestly, like, I hope it's Columbus. So I'll say that. Have the demises of the Quebec Hockey League been greatly exaggerated given some of the talent coming out of the Q in the next few years? I'm not saying that until the talent actually comes. They're not in the NHL yet. And the only person in the QMJHL where I've looked at them and gone, this could be a real one of the most special players to come out of the CHL, or one of the more special players to come out of the CHL from Quebec in a long time, is Villeneuve. With Dane Noyer, he'll be drafted as if he's that, but I don't think he's that. Carbonneau is a boomer bust guy to the max. Bill Zonin I like, but I don't see I don't see him on par with the WHL guys this year, like Smith and Lakovic and Kindle and even a Coots maybe. All those guys I see is a step ahead. But in terms of Quebec, I'm gonna let the chips fall where they may. I will say though, I do think the Quebec League does have the most to benefit from all the changes with college hockey, where all the prep schools in New England and everything, like they might just become a feeder system for the QMJHL, right? They might go up to Canada for a year before going to college, right? And that would be a huge benefit to the quality of play in the Q, right? And definitely, and again, like you rise to the challenge, right? If that league gets a lot harder and more kids from Quebec maybe lose spots out to American players, then get good, get good. It's a test, right? Like I live in Canada. Sometimes you need to be kicked in the butt in order to like be your best. Sometimes you need to be kicked in the butt to like really go, oh, we got to figure this out. But then you kind of go, well, this could be a really good thing for us, right? Like this could work out really well. It might not be fun getting there. It might be annoying, but it could be good. This could be fun. Well, not fun, but you know what I mean? You rise to the challenge, right? Like that's what I'm saying. And we'll see what happens. But yeah, with regards to your specific question, we shall see. We shall see. But the only person that I'm really, really confident about is Villeneuve. And I remember last year going like, yeah, I like the Q class from this year. Like Alex Huang, I thought was kind of fun. But this year I just haven't really been a fan. And there are good players from the Q this year. Like Justin Carbonneau is probably the most skilled fun factor player out of Quebec that I've seen in a dog's year, in a long time. So there's that. Have you checked anything out on Dominic Pavlik? I don't know if you've asked this before. Someone might have. So I apologize if I haven't. Dominic Pavlik. I probably have seen him internationally. I haven't seen him with Moose Jaw. But I've probably seen him with the Czech national team. So I'll take another look because I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. Okay. What are the big strengths and big weaknesses for some of the Swedish defensemen? Dahlqvist, Lindgren, Vuss, and Anborn. Well, they're all pretty decent skaters. I'd say especially Dahlqvist, Anborn, and maybe Lindgren. Voss is just a really smart, capable defensive player. I was actually talking to Mikhail earlier today because I was watching Keishon Aitchison and pulling all this video of him and sending it and being like, I still am not seeing it. I still just don't. It's making me crazy. And when that happens, I have to talk to someone about it. And we got to talking about, it's like, well, he might be gone in the first 20 picks, first 25 picks, top 10. I don't know. Like he might be gone really quick. And we're looking at him and I'm going like Malte Voss, he is a kind of similar player, but I think there's a little bit more there that I kind of like. Like I have Voss ranked and I don't have Aitchison ranked. And he kind of was saying like, yeah, like you could end up with a player in Voss. Like people in Sweden talk about him like he's not like a super high-end guy, but he could be, just a stable insulation guy. I think Dahlqvist is just a really good skater, and I think he plays physical that I in a way that I think works. I think he's going to be an interesting one. But I don't know. Yeah, like and Lindgren has just I've soured on him over the year. I see some moments out of him, but in terms of really driving play in the right direction a lot of the time, especially defensively, like I've seen some questionable stuff there. Like he's a watch list guy for me now, which is quite the drop from where he was in December. I believe that's where he is. Where was he? Zebby, where are you? Yeah, like I had him in the second round, right? So yeah, maybe he's a guy, but I don't know. And Onborn I'm not as familiar with. I have been meaning to go back to Onborn, but I think he's a bit more offensive leaning. But I think of all those guys, I like Dahlqvist's potential the most, but I feel most comfortable about Voss out of all of them. Did you get around to watching Reece Hamilton this weekend? Yes, I did. So Hamilton is very strange. Like he is just a very, very smart passer more than anything. Like if you don't get a Cameron Reed and you really like Cameron Reed, maybe in the mid rounds you could take a Reece Hamilton, right? I watch Hamilton and it's been the same all year. I watch him and I'm going, what are you in the NHL? What role are you going to fill for me, right? Like, because just being able to like pass the puck okay, I don't think that's going to be enough for an NHL coach to play you. You know, like there's not much jam in his game. There's not much sort of offensive confidence. There could be, maybe that could be coached into his game. I think there's a lot of headroom with him. But I went back and watched him with Regina, and it just didn't, you know, compared to the other guys that, again, it's like, when is he going to be the guy that I want in the draft? And I just don't know the answer to that, unfortunately, because I don't know. I kind of liked him last year, and at the Holinka, I thought he was okay. But the competition is pretty stiff for these, like, sort of fringe guys in the mid-rounds that play defense. I think there's a lot of interesting options out there, and Hamilton just hasn't crossed that Rubicon yet for me. Have you ever thought about having David St. Louis on the show? Oh, sure. I mean, sure. David's always welcome. Why not? Phone's open. Phone lines are open. Is that what they say on those telethons? Anyway, but I mean, I'm happy to have anyone on. Even Satan. Anyway. Prediction for how Barkey and Bonk's first pro seasons next year are going to go. I mean, they're going to... I mean, I love Denver Barkey, and I hope that Denver Barkey gets a lot of rope from his coaches to just be himself. Listen, young fella, go out there, raise hell, be a jerk, play fast, play skilled. You know, here's like if I'm John Tortorella, I'm going, hey Denver, pleasure to meet you. Have you ever met Travis Konechny? Be his best friend, learn everything you can from him, and see ya in next year's camp or something. I don't know. Whatever. I think John Tortorella is going to love a guy like Denver Barkey, personally. Bonk is probably going to just be fine. Like, I don't expect Bonk to make the NHL team. I would think that he'll be an AHL guy who plays a lot of minutes. There will be a learning curve. He is a mean physical defenseman, and he will play. I don't think he's ever going to be like a massive high-end needle-moving guy that moves the puck and whatever. He's got some good shooting ability for sure, but he's a guy who, to me, trends more defensively, and I feel like I would just leave him in the AHL, let him play a bunch of minutes, and just let him just get used to that and just keep playing and playing and playing and get reps. Thoughts on Keaton Verhoff? I mean, he is certainly very big. He skates pretty well for a big boy as well. I think the skating's gotten better over the course of the year. Really good shot from the point, obviously. Like, he scored a bunch of goals this year. But I'm not, again, I mentioned this earlier, like, I'm not as familiar with him as I am with guys like Ryan Lynn, at least for next year's draft, and like Mathis Preston I've seen a lot more of. But Verhoff, like, I don't know if I'm going to pencil Verhoff in as like a top 3 guy, but I could see Verhoff being a pretty solid first round pick. Like, again, I'm being very cautious because I probably won't track a game of his for another 7 months. But you know, I like him a lot. I think he's a really, really intriguing package of talent to bring to the table. The shot, the size, the skating ability. It's solid, but I don't have any like incredibly concrete thoughts on him just yet. What do you think Carson Rakoff's NHL ceiling is? Middle six, skilled offensive guy. Like I really like Rakoff. I think he's got lots and lots of he has the ability to get through guys with skill. Does that work in the NHL all the time? No. But, I think he could be a really good complementary offensive winger. Like, I don't think he's going to be this sort of the guy that turns the wheel that we talked about earlier, like that guy that moves play up the ice and, that cycle of possession, that chain of possession is his to run with. But I do think he could be like a good complement to, and in Seattle, right, they just have a plethora of guys that can play offense and can sort of drive the bus. I'm looking at, let me see here. Let me just pull up Seattle's list here. Seattle, there you are. Yeah, I look at Seattle and I go, would I put him on a line with Yanni Newman or Shane Wright or an Oscar Fisker-Molgaard up the middle, or work off of a guy like Edward Shala with him, maybe. Sure. Jagger Firkus and Carson Rop. Like, he's a guy that works off of a lot of other guys because he's skilled and I think complements a lot of different types of players really well. But yeah, like second or third line complementary offensive dude, I think. Why do you think Alexander Holtz has struggled so much in the NHL? I'm surprised I haven't mentioned that he was another lesson for me as well, or at least him and his ilk, where they are advertised. Again, like, I am always very, 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 very wary of how a player is advertised and then how I see them when I watch them, right? And this is just me. This is my own brain doing its thing. But when I watch a player and they're advertised a certain way, and when I watch them and I gather data on them, I'm going, I see where you're coming from, but there are not many guys in the NHL that do this and it works. And the biggest thing with Alexander Holtz and guys like him is they are primarily shooters, right? Holtz had some playmaking to him as well, but it wasn't really like super calculated. It was just, I'm going to put the puck in front of the net. But his shot was what everyone was talking about. Elite shooter, elite shooter, elite shooter, elite shooter. Again, I didn't see him as that wheel of possession guy. He didn't turn it. He wasn't a very involved, super effective defensive player. Not the best transition guy through passing, but carrying the puck, he was okay. And in the offensive zone, he sure shot the puck a whole lot, and he did it from the boards. He did it from the blue line. Like, how many NHL players can you name that score a lot of goals, that skate the puck across the offensive blue line, and before they hit the face-off circles or just inside the face-off circles, they're shooting one on net and scoring? It's just not a thing. It doesn't happen. Alex Ovechkin doesn't even do that. He lets other guys do all the work for him, and then he just claps a bomb and it's in the net, right? So with Holtz, it's a matter of just like the data did not favor him very well as a guy who could be a really high-end NHL scorer. And it was heebie-jeebie time for me, and I just didn't have the confidence to be like, well, the shot will figure it out. The shot will figure itself out, right? He's such a good shooter that he'll figure it out. And the lesson for me now has been, if you have a guy advertised as a shooter, you have questions about his game elsewhere, and he just does not take shots that are going to lead to scoring chances very often in the NHL, that's problematic, right? That is problematic. And unfortunately, in his case, it just hasn't worked out. And there's been players like that over the years where I watch them and I'm like, yeah, they're advertised as good scorers. I can see why. But putting themselves in a position to score is just not really in the cards for them in a projectable way. And shooting the puck, they might be really good shooters, but almost at the NHL level, doesn't matter if you're a really good shooter if all you're doing is shooting from the half wall or shooting from the goal line on a rebound or shooting just inside the blue line, right? Like, it's just not really super conducive to scoring, right? Look at Patrick Laine. That's a guy who for years scored a bunch of goals
uncharacteristically from long distance in the NHL, and then it just dried up because that was his brand, and teams could pre-scout that, right? And it limits you. So yeah, that's kind of I think that's what happened. Do you think Aiden Fink could be an effective NHL player? I mean, I think he is coming along very well. I think he'll get games, but I still am a little bit doubtful of the physicality of the NHL and speed of the NHL being something where he can be as productive as he is. But, I mean, I could see him getting games. Did you see that Boston College got upset a couple nights ago? I did. I mean, I imagine they're still going to the NCAA tournament, but to see them get booted out of the Hockey East playoffs by Northeastern, I believe it was, pretty wild stuff. My poor son, Teddy Stiga, eliminated. It's too bad, but I hope they're at the NCAA tournament. I imagine they will be. They were the number one ranked team in the country for a long time, if not the whole year. Anyway. Have you watched Oliver Kapanen much in the SHL this year? What's your best guess on what he ends up as an NHL player? I mean, I haven't seen him much in the SHL, but I did watch him with Montreal early in the year. And I've watched Oliver Kapanen off and on for a long time. Like, he was a guy who I quietly, that draft year, kind of liked. Like, I did not see this. Like, I similar to Koivunen, right? Like, it's kind of like Ville Koivunen in a way, but he's bigger and he's a center. But it's just he's so smart and sees the ice so well that he can come off looking very, very good, and I think he is quite good. I think with him, I think he's like he could be a solid third line center in Montreal, like third or fourth line center, like, and I mean that in a positive way. Like, I just don't think he's a dynamic enough offensive player that it'll be top 6 NHL minutes, but like a good possession defense first center that moves the puck really well. I think it's entirely possible, right? Like, and I see him similar to a guy like Ville Koivunen, similar profiles, right? So when I look at Koivunen, I go, could he be in the NHL right now? And I mean, Kapanen played what, I think 10 games and had like a point or something like that, or maybe a little more than that. I don't know. But like, could Koivunen play for the Penguins right now and chip in offensively here and there and just maybe not look quite ready for the NHL yet? Sure. Is that what Kapanen was? Kinda, but in a good way. Like, I don't know, for a guy like Oliver Kapanen to make the NHL so quickly is amazing. But yeah, for me, it's third, maybe fourth line, but third, something like that, like wherever works. But I don't see him playing super high in the lineup. I gotta say, I think the NTDP guys this year are undervalued. I love LJ Mooney, and I'm curious what you think of McKinney. I like McKinney a lot. I honestly, again, Cole McKinney is one of these guys where I came into the season. I've been watching him since he was 16, when he was with Chicago Mission, I think it was. And I remember Cole McKinney, and I just kind of was like, all right, like, he's okay. Like, I see why he's productive at this level, and he's smart, and sure, I get it. And I think he grew a little bit since 16. And I just looked at him and I went, I don't know. And when I watched the NTDP this year for a while, I kind of was thinking, yeah, he's just kind of fine. Like, he's an okay anchor. But eventually I went, you know what? I've talked to some people who really like him. Like, there are some people out there that really, really like him. And I didn't want to write him off completely. So I went, you know what? I'll track some data, get some really concrete stuff, look at him in really fine detail and see what's there. I really liked him. I thought he just brought such a projectable, like, again, we're talking about Oliver Kapanen, right? Such a projectable style of play up the middle where he works off of pressure really well. He keeps guys away from the puck really well. He doesn't try to do too much on his own. He's got some decent finishing ability, but that's not really the hallmark of his game. Like, I like him a lot more than I do Jack Murtagh. Like, again, Murtagh, I think, is a guy, once the puck's in the offensive zone, you see him at his best. But McKinney is a really good transition player. He is pretty physical, but just a really effective minutes eater. Like, that's kind of what he is. He's just a guy who, you know, like, next thing you know, the game's over, right? Like, you put him over the boards, and you know, like, he could be a thing, right? Like, a really good, you know, puck protector or physical presence who moves the play in the right direction a lot of the time. And I also love LJ Mooney. I did a game of his last week. It was by far the best game I've seen of him this season. He was electric and awesome, and I am going to watch him a lot more before the end of the year because good Lord Almighty, he was really, really, really good in that game, and definitely looks a lot better than he did the last 4 times I saw him this year. He is a boomer bust kid, but I could see him being a team scouting guy in like the 5th round. Toronto has picks, they have a bunch of picks, but none of them are very high. And I mean, like, if I came away with something like Sverchek, Hillstrom, like round 2 Sverchek, round 3 Hillstrom, round 4 or 5, sorry, they have 2 picks in round 5. Maybe round 5, Arvid Drott or Sean Barnhill or Quinn Beauchene maybe, and an LJ Mooney in there as well in the 5th round, or if he's there in the 6th round, that would be kind of cool. And then you take a swing in the 7th round on Tinus Luke Koblar, who I love. I'd be a happy boy, happy camper. That'd be me, happy boy. Okay. Where are we here? Where are we? If you were the Flyers general manager, what would you do if you found out I was? If I was Daniel Briere, but wearing a mask? What would you say then? I don't know. Would you take the chance on McQueen at the 7th to 10th pick? No. I'd pick Dane Noyer if he's there. I mean, I guess. Like, I think that would be, like, acceptable. I wouldn't do it. Like, if I'm the Philadelphia Flyers, and I'm not from Philadelphia, I've never been. The closest I've ever been to Philadelphia is watching It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia from start to finish at least 4 times. It might be my favorite television show, like, ever made. And that's it. That's my experience with Philadelphia. But I think I know Philadelphia well enough to know who their fans like as hockey players. I don't think Caleb Desnoyers is one that I would think is that style of guy. I would think if you're in the 7 to 10 range, a Carter Bear might make sense. Jackson Smith in Philadelphia. I think Jackson Smith might be the guy that I would want. Like, he is a menace, and he is talented, and they could use a defenseman. I think they could use a young defenseman that's really high-end tools, and see where it goes, because he also brings the pain, too. Like, if you coach him the right way, like Joel Henderson sent me a clip of him from when he was draft eligible in the WHL, and it was so hilarious. Like, he makes an awful play in the offensive zone, like overhandles the puck, loses control of it, and just is left completely behind. He covers almost the entire ice surface on the back check and just catches up to someone, and from the blind side, he explodes him. Like, just crushes him. Skating, like, catching up from behind. So the net difference in velocity wasn't very big. And it was kind of big because he caught up pretty quick, but just crushed him. And I just went, yeah, that's why I love this kid. Like, yeah, there are some moments where you go, ugh. But overall, man, sick hockey player. And I feel like Flyers fans would love Jackson Smith. Any Mads Kongsbach Kluvo thoughts? No, but you can ask Mikhail. I'll take a look at him before Thursday. But I don't know. I feel like he's always kind of been just like a good under 20 player in Sweden. Like, he's just, I don't really see much there where I'm going, that's an NHL player. I just feel like he's kind of like that, slightly more skilled than other guys, a bit quicker than a lot of other guys, and he can take advantage of it and whatever. But projectability of the NHL, I'm not sure. But I'll take another look, and I'm sure Mikhail knows plenty more than I do about him. Will Philip Machar ever make it? Well, you can check out my video room on him. I think he could. I think giving up on him so quickly would be a grave mistake. The game I saw, he was playing with Jared Davidson and Florian Xhekaj, and that did not feel like a good match for him. But you never know. I mean, would I give him a shot if Montreal was done with him? Yeah. See what he could do. Like, I think there's enough there. And the second part of that question. Habs targets for 2025. Well, here's what I'll do. I have a tool that I made that simulates a mock draft using average rankings that I track in my thing. Obviously not gospel, obviously not super, guaranteed. It's not predicting the future. But it does do a pretty decent job of who might be some of the best players for me available at a given spot in a draft class. So let me just run it real quick, and I'll let you know who my list pops out with for Montreal, because there could be quite a lot of interesting players for them. Let me just take a look here. Draft picks. Where is Montreal? Montreal. There you are. So I'm going to plug in. I'll open it up, actually. Just give me a moment here. I apologize for the delay. I have to authorize my account so that my Google can work. Okay. So, yeah. Let's do this. 16th overall, 18th overall, 39th, 48th, 80th, 81st, 83rd, 105. Oh my God, they have so many picks. 112, 114, 176, and 208. All right, there. Oh, whoops. I did it wrong. I did my own code wrong, believe it or not. I too screw things up sometimes. Okay. Now we are ready. So let me pop over here. Can you see this? All right. So here's what I did. So I enter a randomness factor, and I put in the picks that I want to pick with, right? So now it's automatic. I mean, if I'm Montreal at 16, yes, Colin Potter is my best player available in this simulation. He's my boy. At number 18, Carter Bear, Ben Kindle. I mean, if I'm Montreal, I mean, it's amazing that Caleb Desnoyers is still available here. But if I'm Montreal, I'm not just drafting Desnoyers because he's French Canadian. But I think I would go with Kindle and go Kindle Potter in the first round. Then at 39, for me, I mean, I'd probably go Sverchek here. You know what? It's Montreal. Let's have some fun. Vinsagi, just big, heavy, skilled guy. Oh, Sverchek is still available. So Sverchek, I'll take him here, sure. At 80, oh, now things are getting started thin. Probably could have gone with McKinney on that last pick, but I love Sverchek. And I don't want to bet him being available at 80, but I'll go Hillstrom here. 81. 81, let's go Barnhill. Why not? No, let's go Prokhorov. I feel like Prokhorov could be on Montreal's list around here. So we'll go with Prokhorov at 83. Oh, right, 83. Okay, now I'll take Barnhill. 106. What else? Who is here? Let's see. At 106, let's go Quinbo Shane. It's a French sounding name, and I like him a lot. And there, I think, is a good range to pick him. 112, I'll take my best player available, Harry Nancy, my boy. 114, God, they have so many picks. I mean, I already have him on Team Scouching, but I would think about Ludwig Johnson here. Let's, man, like, I don't even want to pick anyone at this point. Maybe Cooper Simpson, sure. Why not? Go for high school player in the middle of the draft. 176, I'll take LJ Mooney here. Again, like, this is based on what's publicly available rankings-wise, so I can't, like, if it's seemingly obvious that if a guy like LJ Mooney is going to be available, if he's going to be gone before then I can't factor that in unless someone has him ranked, which a lot of people actually don't. And then at 208, well, this could be just fun. You just take who you like. I don't know. Nobody? Yeah, no, Koblar. Let's go Koblar and then end the draft. So, I mean, if I'm Montreal and I end up with Colin Potter, Benjamin Kindle, Shane Van Sage, Michael Sverchek, Gustav Hillstrom, Daniil Prokhorov, Sean Barnhill, Quinn Beauchene, Harry Nancy, Cooper Simpson, LJ Mooney, and Tinus Lukoblar, that's hilarious. Like, I would lose my mind. I'd go nuts if I were Montreal and got away with all of that. And I know it's a lot of forwards, but this defense group this year just is kind of okay. They're just kind of okay. Anyway, let's go back to this. Hello again. What's the thoughts on Alex Huang? I don't really know. He's dynamic and a good skater, but I just don't see enough to project to the NHL, honestly. What's the lowest you could see Colin Potter falling? Well, I was told by someone in the NHL not too long ago that think he might go middle of the first round. So 16 to Montreal makes sense. I mean, I can't see him getting past, like, God, if the Chicago Blackhawks get him at 23 with Toronto's first pick, or like Nashville with Tampa's pick. But I could see like Columbus going for him at 14. They also have 21 on my list here right now. I don't know. Columbus maybe could make sense. That would be pretty wild. So yeah, I would think like 25 and beyond, I'd go, what is happening? That he's too good to be down here, but yeah. Is it a crazy comparison to say Michael Misa reaches his ceiling, that he could be close to Joe Sakic? Honestly, that name has popped into my head before too, obviously a lot of people watching the show probably don't remember Joe Sakic very much from when they were young. I remember Joe Sakic very well, and I honestly see where you're coming from there. I like Sakic was, you watched him and he didn't skate like he was fast, but he was fast. And he got away from guys, and he generated speed and generated space and worked off of other players extremely well. I see totally where you're coming from on that. All right, let's get through this here. If you were Nashville, would you rather pick Misa or Higgins? Probably Misa. Probably Misa. I love Higgins though. Like if I was the one vote for Misa and 9 other people wanted Higgins, I wouldn't soil a diaper over it. I would just go, you know what? Fine. I lost this one. I love Misa, but Higgins is a good player too. I'm totally okay with him too. Yes, Laval Rocket, rookie goal scoring holder for Laurier and Xhekaj. You're dang right. Because he plays with Machar. Noah Jenkin thoughts. I'm not sure how much you've seen of him since he had a long injury. No, I have not seen much of him, but he is a guy that's been on my list to watch. I have seen a bit of him with, was he with Guelph? I know he's with Guelph. So I did see him a little bit play with Guelph this year, but no, he's on the list now too. So there's that. I could see Montreal drafting Carbonneau at 16. I mean, I guess, but boy, that I don't know. I'm more with Tony on Carbonneau more and more every week. How do you make this draft simulator? I've been learning Python code for years, off and on, especially in the summers and the off season when I don't have as much going on. And I mean, I'm not gonna lie, a little bit of help from ChatGPT. Obviously, my thoughts on ChatGPT are a little complicated, but I think for things like that, it is excellent. If you just want to, I think you need to know how to read code. Like, you need to understand what it is you are doing. And I think in order to use ChatGPT properly, you have to be able to talk to it properly in order to get what you want out of it, and understand its limitations. And once you do that, then I think you can have it's a really useful tool. But I built sort of the framework of it, and I kind of just like had the general scope and sketched it out of how I wanted it to work, and then just went to work with ChatGPT writing code, and it works. It works okay. Hoping the Flyers will draft speed and skill at a high level, but with grit. So yeah, I would say Jackson Smith. They need good defense and center in their system. I would agree. Jackson Smith in Philadelphia makes a ton of sense to me. Any thoughts on Brandon Gorzinski? None. Zero. Nada. Fun name, though. David Lewandowski. I mean, I think Lewandowski's just kind of fine. Like, I've watched him at the World Juniors, and I thought he was okay. I went and watched him with Saskatoon, and again, I feel like similar to the Kongsbach Clevo guy, the Danish kid that Brian Stewart asked about. I feel similarly about him too. Just like a bit more skilled, a bit more physical, maybe a bit quicker than his competition in the WHL, but I just don't see an NHL guy. What do you think of the Puck Preps player cards? Do you find they generally align with your track data? I'm contractually obligated to say that they are incredible. No, I'm kidding. I know Chase decently well. He's responsible for making a lot of those. It's a bit of a team effort, but he's the data guy there. And I've been trying to get him on the show. I tried to get him on tonight, but he's busy with work. But we're going to have him on at some point because I just want to nerd out with him so bad about what we're doing and what we do and why, like, just why do we do this to ourselves? And just, because of all the people in the world, he is probably one of 5 or 6 that I know of that get it, like that might have the same level of illness, but anyway, we're going to have him on at some point, but, they largely reflect what makes sense to me. I see a lot of what makes sense there. And I think Chase does a good job and the others who are involved. And yeah, I think they're fine. Subscribe. Go to Puck Preps and subscribe. We have nationals, U.S. nationals coming up, coverage. I'm doing the U16s, but we have coverage for every age group, I believe. So you can check that out at Puck Preps. Get a subscription. You might have already talked about it, but what were your thoughts on Pronman's new draft ranking having Desnoyers so high? Scott Wheeler told me it was a possibility. I just have resigned myself to the fact that it's going to be a thing. Pronman generally is pretty tied in with NHL teams, and Desnoyers just seems like another one of these guys that NHL teams just fall in love with and probably will turn out to be a fine hockey player. I like him just fine. He's in my top 20, but yeah, I disagree. I don't know. I just disagree with having him that high, and it's been a long time I've been saying that. Like, it's, it just is what it is. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I've seen him a ton. I've watched him a ton, and I've watched a lot of other players a ton, and I just see him as one of a bigger pack is all. Thoughts on Daniil Prokhorov and Ivan Arkhipov. So we have Arkhipov already on the watch list for a future show. Prokhorov is, you can add him to the list of guys who have kind of had my eye on over the course of the year, and I'm kind of gone, all right, like, this guy's kind of intriguing, and the package of tools is fun, and there could be something here. And then all of a sudden, like, something happens, and boom, he's like 20th on someone's list, and I'm going, okay, I think this guy's kind of neat, but oh geez. And now it's like a bit of an avalanche of like, well, maybe he's like a top 20 guy all of a sudden. Like, maybe he's a first rounder, maybe this and this and this. Like, what about blah, blah, blah. I mean, I don't know. I've seen Prokhorov quite a bit. He was one of the first guys I sort of jotted down as a glitter player, so to speak, at the beginning of the year. Like, he just caught my eye. I was watching, I think it was Vilchinski early in the year. And I think he was one who was on the other team. And I went, who is this guy? He's super lanky, pretty skilled for a big lanky kid too, like, and a really good finisher. Like, his shot is really, really good. But I don't know. He's a long way away, I think. Like it's kind of a similar profile to Kirill Dolzhenkov to me. Really big, really lanky, but pretty good hands for a big kid. Dolzhenkov was more of a playmaker, I think, but Prokhorov is more of a finisher. Doesn't move the puck super well. Doesn't have a ton of purpose behind a lot of his playmaking, but, he's a good player. It's just, again, he has a ton of goals, not a whole lot of assists, and when you watch, it doesn't take very long to figure out why. And if you're drafting him in the first round, like, God bless you. You're betting on long-term upside for sure, and it's there. Like, Prokhorov's in my second round. Like, he's a good player. But I think he's a project. He's a bet, right? You're picking a, maybe not Bitcoin, but like he's a, what's the tier of coin below like Ethereum? Like, you're betting on Solana there a little bit. It's not fart coin. You're not betting on Melania coin. you're betting on something somewhat established, but you never know, right? It could go a number of ways. I like him. I like the stock, but things got very out of control very quick in my books. What do you think about Dmitry Bachelnikov? Looking great in the KHL. Honestly, I haven't seen him in a few months, but really just compact, pocket-sized, aggressive, agile, skilled hockey player. I don't know about KHL upside. Like him and Kanserov are guys who I've really liked in the KHL, but I just don't know about the NHL. But time will tell. All it takes is a good performance in front of a coach or whatever, and whatever. I mean, if he comes over, it's probably because he's penciled in for an NHL job at some point. Generally, that's the trend with KHL guys. This was a few weeks ago, and I forgot to ask about it. How insane was watching one of the games Guelph had to play with Max Nemesnikov on defense? It was hilarious. It was great. Honestly, I am very much on team. Just take a fun, fast, skilled winger and try them on defense. You know, a tenacious, fast, skilled, fun to watch hockey player, and just stick them on defense and see what happens. If they're 5'7", 5'8", what's the worst that could happen if you're the Guelph Storm? You lose 11-9 instead of 10-9? Oh, that's too bad. I love it. I mean, look, I also, again, I was at the game last Monday with AJ, and we kind of laughed to each other about just sort of watching the Leafs and watching them play, and we're just kind of like, man, remember when they tried Mitch Marner on defense for a little bit there? That was an interesting experiment. Was that bad? Like, do the Leafs have a top pair defenseman in Mitch Marner and they just never stuck with it? Half joking, of course. But it was fun, and it was an interesting experiment, to say the least. So yeah, seeing the Nemesnikov there was hilarious, and it's a lot of fun. I don't know. I love to see that stuff. You have the guy who can skate and is tenacious, a real rambunctious kid, so utilize him, do it. Do the thing. Okay, I'll answer this last one and then we got to go. Thoughts on Max Plante being over a point per game in his first year of NCAA was shocking to me, but I don't watch too much NCAA. I mean, I am a little surprised as well that he was that productive. But he again, like, really smart player. Like he grew on me quite a bit over the course of last season. He went around where I would have considered picking him, but other guys, I think, stuck out a little bit better for me in that draft class. Like Teddy Stiga was my guy. I would have loved him in that range, and I think I still would stand by that. But Plante is a good player. Like he's got some good quickness to him. He's really smart though, like competitive and smart. And that's what Kyle Dubas. That's what the Red Wings like sometimes, right? Those guys who are competitive and smart and move the puck well and attack the middle of the net, attack the middle of the ice pretty well. So yeah, I'm impressed with his first year for sure. It's been really, really good. So hopefully that continues. I love seeing players work out, even if I wasn't super huge on them as I was with Plante last year. Good player, having a good year. All right, that's going to be it for tonight. Thanks again for joining me. Thanks for sticking with me on my own through all of this. This is a lot of fun. We'll be back Thursday. Again, no AJ, but it'll be me and Mr. Mikael Holm of Frölunda Hockey Club. We're going to talk Swedish prospects, Swedish development programs, how things work over there, shine some light on something that is not often super explored over here in North America. We're going to have a lot of fun. Yeah, that'll be it. So between now and then, stay safe, hang in there, do whatever it is you need to do. It's weird because usually AJ takes things to the end and talks about the Toronto Maple Leafs in some way. I mean, Fraser Minton had a natural hat trick the other night, so there's that. I think Nikita Urbyankin scored in his first Lehigh Valley Phantoms game, so there's that too. And we did not have a lot of fun watching the Leafs last Monday night against Florida, but maybe the game tonight went way better. I mean, it clearly did. They're filling the net, but regardless, we're going on too long here. This was a lot of fun. Again, thank you very much for joining me. Of course, if you want to help out the show, you can check out our sponsors. They're all in the description box below. You can also go to Scouching.ca. Consider a subscription that helps us the most, where you'll get access to a bunch of cool data tools, including some of the ones you've seen over the course of the evening. We'll see you on Thursday afternoon where we have our special guest, Mikhail Holm. And thank you very much for joining us. We'll see you then.